Mist curled along the edges of the trail as the trio crested the final hill, the village of Black Hollow slumbering below like a wounded animal. Its thatched roofs sagged beneath heavy clouds, and the woods surrounding it pressed too close for comfort. A single, crooked steeple jutted into the grey sky, silent, watchful. Thalindra Moonshadow pulled her cloak tighter. "I don't like this," she muttered, eyes scanning the tree line. "The silence. It's unnatural." "Everything about this place is unnatural," growled Gorun Stonefist, the dwarf's hand never straying far from the hilt of his axe. His armor creaked with each step, but the tension in his jaw was louder than any metal. "If the stories are true, people vanish here. Whole families, like fog when the sun rises." "Then we bring light," Mira of the Vale said calmly. The human cleric's white robes, though travel-worn, seemed to glow faintly in the gloom. The symbol of Selûne, the Moon Maiden, shimmered on her chest. "Let's find the mayor, or whoever's brave enough to speak." They entered the village without challenge. No guards, no animals, just the creak of weathered wood and the whisper of wind through skeletal trees. A few faces peered from shuttered windows, pale, hollow-eyed, but none came out. Eventually, they reached the town square, where a half-rotted notice board leaned drunkenly. A crow cawed from its perch atop the rusted bell. A man in a tattered brown cloak emerged from the nearby inn. "You must be the sellswords," he rasped, voice like dry leaves. "I'm Roderick, acting mayor since—" He glanced at the chapel, then quickly looked away. "Since the last one vanished." "Vanished?" Thalindra asked, her voice sharp. Roderick nodded. "Same as the blacksmith's boy, the weaver's wife, and the priest 3 weeks back. No signs, no tracks, just gone." Mira stepped forward. "Have any returned?" "No, but sometimes we hear them," his voice quavered. "Singing, laughing, calling from the woods." Gorun spat. "Hags, ghosts, or worse. Sounds like something's playing with souls." Roderick swallowed. "They say the curse began when someone disturbed the tomb. East of here, the old one, sealed for centuries. A hunter went in for shelter, came back, changed, eyes black as pitch. Said the sleeper stirred, killed his own kin, then vanished." The 3 adventurers exchanged grim looks. "We'll go," said Mira. "Where is this tomb?" Roderick gestured east. "Past the ruined mill. Follow the black trees. But take care. Nothing living lingers long near that place." The next morning, armed and prepared, the trio left the village behind. Fog clung to the undergrowth like spider's silk. As they crossed a crumbling stone bridge, Mira paused. "Feel that," she whispered. Thalindra's ears twitched. No birds. No insects. Then, a whisper, a single word, "Return." Gorun raised his axe. "Show yourself." The whisper faded. They pressed on. The forest changed subtly. Trees twisted unnaturally. Their bark oozed dark sap. Shapes moved just out of sight. Nothing concrete, just the sense of being watched. The tomb's entrance revealed itself as a yawning black hole in a hillside, framed by ancient stonework. Glyphs, long since worn away, spoke of a forgotten empire, one where the dead were not silent. "Smells wrong," Thalindra murmured. Mira stepped forward and held aloft her holy symbol. "By Selûne's grace, reveal what lies within." A soft silver glow pulsed outward, but died instantly at the threshold. "A ward," she frowned. "No? Something stronger. A hunger." Gorun grunted. "Well, let's give it something to chew on." They stepped into the darkness. Inside, stale air pressed down like a burial shroud. Their torches flickered against damp stone. The tunnel sloped downward and faint scratches marred the walls, fingernails, judging by the gouges. "Someone tried to claw their way out," Thalindra said grimly. They passed ancient murals, figures bowing before a cloaked king with a scepter made of bone. At his feet, legions of undead. The last panel showed him sealing a door with blood. Mira paused. "I've read of this. King Valdris, the Bone Sovereign, a necromancer king from the old days, supposedly slain by his own court when he tried to become death itself. And sealed in a tomb, I'd wager," Gorun said. "We're waking him up, aren't we?" The corridor opened into a circular chamber with 6 sarcophagi arranged around a central altar. On it, a cracked stone bowl held congealed blood. "Ritual site," Mira whispered. "We shouldn't linger." Clang. The lid of a sarcophagus scraped open, then another, then a third. Skeletal warriors stepped forth, armor rusted but swords gleaming with malice. Hollow eyes blazed green. Thalindra drew twin daggers. "Guess we're not welcome." The battle was fierce. Gorun charged one skeleton, cleaving through its ribcage with a roar. Thalindra darted and danced, cutting ligaments and vanishing into shadow. Mira invoked divine fire, burning 2 to ash with sacred light, then silence. Panting, bruised, they surveyed the room. On the far wall a passage had opened. Darkness beckoned. Gorun kicked a crumbled helm aside. So much for a quiet village job. Mira picked up a shard from the altar. "This is blood crystal, used in high necromancy. Someone's been feeding power into the tomb." Thalindra sheathed her blades. "Then let's cut off the source." They stepped into the deeper dark, toward answers and horrors waiting beyond. The deeper passage sloped sharply, the damp air growing colder with each step. Moss gave way to a thin black mold clinging to the walls, as if the tomb itself were rotting from within. The flicker of their torchlight barely pushed back the darkness. It was thick, unnatural, greedy. "This tomb wasn't just sealed," Mira whispered, her breath fogging. "It was buried for a reason." "Then we're about to find out why," Thalindra muttered, pulling her hood low as the ceiling narrowed above them. They emerged into a vast crypt, ringed by high stone balconies. Pillars shaped like weeping angels lined the walls. Their eyes, hollow sockets, seemed to follow the adventurers as they entered. In the center of the floor lay a broken circle of runes, the stone blackened and scorched. "What happened here?" Gorun asked, tapping the floor with his boot. "Magic," Mira replied, her brow furrowed. "Old and unstable. This was once a warding circle, now shattered." The moment she spoke, a gust of wind howled through the crypt, not cold, but full of whispers. Words in a tongue none of them understood, except perhaps Mira, who suddenly gasped and staggered. "Mira?" Thalindra grabbed her arm. "What is it?" "Visions. Selûne speaks." Mira's eyes glowed faintly silver. "I see. Chains of bone, wrapped around a soul screaming beneath the altar. Something buried. Not just in earth, but in time. It's calling out." Her voice deepened unnaturally for a moment. "The sleeper stirs. The seal weakens." Then she collapsed. Gorun knelt beside her, shaking her gently. "Cleric, wake up." Mira's eyes fluttered open. Sweat beaded her brow. "I'm all right. I saw too much, but I know this now. We're not alone down here." Suddenly, the floor trembled. Dust fell from above. And then, from behind one of the stone angels, came the click of a hidden mechanism. The wall rotated open. A skeletal figure in a long-dead noble's armor stepped through, flanked by 2 others. But these were no mindless undead. Their eyes blazed with intelligence, and their swords were blackened but well-maintained. They raised their weapons. "Get behind me!" Gorun barked, stepping forward. His shield met the first sword with a thunderous clang. Thalindra vanished into shadow, reappearing behind the second undead knight and plunging her dagger into its exposed spine. It shrieked, unnaturally loud for a creature with no lungs. Mira, recovering her footing, called upon Selûne. "By moonlight and mercy, begone!" A pulse of radiant energy flared outward, searing the undead and causing the third knight to crumble into ash. But the first two were stronger, faster. One slammed Gorun backward into a column. The other struck Thalindra, slicing across her shoulder. Blood sprayed, but the elf spun away, gritting her teeth. "Fall already!" she shouted. Gorun roared, rising. His axe cleaved through his foe's midsection. The knight staggered, but didn't fall. "Bloody persistent!" Gorun bellowed. "Together!" Mira cried. She raised her holy symbol again, channeling divine wrath. Selûne's light wrapped around Gorun's axe. With a final cry, he brought it down, and the knight shattered like glass. The second one turned to flee, vanishing into the shadows of the crypt. "Let it go," Thalindra said, breathing heavily. "It's running to tell something. That means there's something to fear." Mira helped her to her feet. "Your wound. I'll live. For now." They turned to the passage the knights had emerged from. Inside, a narrow hallway descended even deeper. Along the walls were murals, these more intact. They depicted King Valdris not as a villain, but a savior, healing the sick, building cities, teaching magic. But in the final mural, his eyes were hollow. He stood alone above a mass of corpses, arms outstretched. A black crown floated above his head, and chains of soul light wrapped around him, binding him in place. "He tried to become a god of death," Mira whispered, "and was sealed away by his own disciples. That must be the tomb's true purpose, to contain his power." At the end of the hall they found another door, ironbound, covered in runes. A single gem was set into the center. As they approached, it pulsed. Thalindra's hand hovered near it. "Trap?" Mira examined it. "No, more like a test." "I'm not fond of either," Thalindra said. But before they could act, the gem flashed, and the room around them changed. Suddenly, they stood in a moonlit courtyard. The sounds of battle rang out in the distance. Ghostly figures ran past, soldiers and mages, some screaming, some chanting. A woman in royal robes collapsed before them, clutching a bloodied staff. "Help! Him!" she begged. "He wasn't always this way." Then everything went black. They awoke on the cold stone once again. The door was open. "No more games," Gorun growled. Beyond was a small chamber. A stone pedestal in the center held an object wrapped in dark cloth. As Thalindra unwrapped it, her breath caught. It was an amulet, a silver eye set in obsidian. Power thrummed through it like a heartbeat. "The amulet of eternal sight," Mira whispered. "It grants vision beyond the veil. This could pierce illusions, detect ghosts, even hidden souls." "And it's not cursed?" Thalindra asked warily. "No," Mira confirmed. "This is a gift, but why leave it here?" From the far side of the chamber, a voice answered, "Because those who bear the truth must first suffer for it." They turned. From the shadows stepped a figure in black robes, his skin pale and stretched tight, eyes glowing violet. "I am Aravon, last of Valdris's disciples," he said. "And your journey ends here." The figure of Aravon radiated a cold authority. His voice, though soft, echoed unnaturally in the chamber. "You trespass where time itself has been chained. You awaken what was meant to sleep." Gorun stepped forward, axe at the ready. "Good. I've been looking for something to hit." But Aravon only raised a single bony hand. The world twisted. They awoke not in the tomb, but in the open, beneath a moonless sky. Crumbling towers rose around them, jagged and half-consumed by vines. It was a ruined fortress, silent as a grave. Mira gasped. "Dusk Spire." Thalindra looked around, blades drawn. That name again. "Is this illusion or memory?" "No illusion," Mira said. "I feel the weave around us. This place is real." "Then where's our robed friend?" Gorun asked. As if in answer, the sky cracked open. A howling storm of black fire spiraled above Dusk Spire, and from its center descended Aravon, only now clad in armor of shadow. Around him rose a tide of undead, skeletal knights, shrieking wraiths, and lumbering abominations stitched from the dead. "This fortress was where we last sealed Valdris," Eravon announced, "but now the seal shatters, and your deaths will feed his awakening." Thalindra vanished into shadow, darting across the battlefield toward a raised platform, looking for vantage or sabotage. Mira raised her holy symbol, channeling divine light that burned a group of ghouls to cinders. Gorun, grinning like a man who'd found the challenge he'd craved, charged. "Let's dance, Bonebag!" His axe met the first of the undead horde with thunderous force. Bone shattered, armor split, and Gorun laughed wildly, his blood singing in his veins. Above, Eravon raised a hand. "Enough!" A wave of necrotic energy exploded outward. Gorun was thrown back, skidding across stone. His beard smoldered, but he stood again. "Gonna take more than that." "Gladly," Eravon whispered. He conjured a blade of shadow and descended, slashing at the dwarf with fury. Gorun met him with shield and axe, sparks flying, undead surging around them like a tide. Elsewhere, Mira invoked Turn Undead, banishing a dozen spirits in radiant moonlight. But it drained her. She dropped to one knee. A ghostly voice whispered in her ear, "Endure and ascend." Selûne's blessing surged through her. Her wounds closed, her strength renewed. She rose, a light in the dark, and cast Wraithfire, the newly learned evocation. A column of silvery flame engulfed a hulking corpse beast, reducing it to scorched ash. "Thalindra, now!" Mira shouted. From her perch, Thalindra hurled a dagger, silver-edged, enchanted, and struck the shadow blade in Eravon's hand, disrupting the spell mid-cast. Gorun seized the moment. "Here's your end." With a roar, he buried his axe in Eravon's chest. The necromancer screamed, dark energy unraveling around him, but in that moment, the true horror revealed itself. From beneath the fortress, a crack formed in the stone. A voice echoed upward. "You awaken me." Again. The seal broke. A massive skeletal hand tore through the ground. Eyes like twin eclipses blazed in the gloom. King Valdris, partially risen, bound in soul chains, stared upward. Eravon, dying, smiled. "My king, I deliver them to you." Then the last of his flesh turned to dust. The emergence of Valdris was a wave of death. The air went still. Birds fell from the sky. Thalindra's shadow lengthened unnaturally. Mira trembled. "He's not fully risen yet, but his spirit, it's here." Gorun coughed blood. He staggered. No running now. "Gorun!" Mira cried. He looked at her and grinned, blood in his teeth. "I'll hold him off. You two finish this." He charged. Valdris raised his hand, and Gorun's axe shattered mid-swing. The undead king gripped the dwarf in one massive hand. Gorun roared defiance to the end. Snap, then silence. "Gorun!" Thalindra screamed. Mira fell to her knees. Her light flickered, but then her goddess answered. A radiant beam of moonlight split the sky. Mira rose, voice full of divine fury. "You will not take him in vain." Wielding her divine channel, Mira unleashed another wraithfire, brighter, deeper, holy. It seared the abomination, and Valdris recoiled, his form crumbling back into the rift. For now, the fortress shook. Thalindra ran to Mira's side, eyes burning with fury. "We finish what Gorun started." Together, they channeled their remaining strength into a final blow. Divine magic and arcane blades striking the soul chains that anchored Valdris. 1, 2, 3. The chains shattered. Valdris screamed, not in pain, but in rage. "You delay the inevitable." Then he vanished, sinking into the rift as the seal reformed, weakened but holding. Silence. Dusk's spire crumbled behind them as the sun finally crept over the horizon. The darkness retreated, but Gorun lay still beneath a pile of stone. his axe broken at his side. Mira knelt beside him. "You held the line, old friend." Thalindra placed a hand on his still form. He didn't run. Never did. They buried him under a cairn overlooking the ruined valley. Mira raised her holy symbol. "Selûne, take his soul into your light." As the sun rose, so too did Mira. Changed, stronger, enlightened, they returned to the tomb hollow-eyed and heavy-hearted. Gorun's death hung over them like a storm cloud, but there was no time to mourn. The seal over Valdris had weakened. Just a fracture, but fractures grow. Black Hollow remained unaware of what nearly broke free beneath the ruins of Dusk Spire. Mira and Thalindra returned in silence, stopping only to rest, gather provisions, and pray. Mira lit a candle for Gorun every night. Thalindra never spoke of him again, but cleaned his axe, reforged its head, and left it resting against the roots of an old oak near the village. Then they descended once more, deeper than before. The new passage opened behind the crypt where Eravon's magic had once sealed a vault. With his death, the ward collapsed. Stone steps twisted downward into a spiral of blackened rock. As they descended, Mira paused. "Do you feel that?" Thalindra nodded. "The air's thicker, pressure, and heat." The chamber they entered was massive, a buried temple, its ceiling held up by gargantuan statues of chained angels. A pool of still black water reflected the flickering torchlight. At the far end sat a single door, golden and gleaming, untouched by decay. A plaque above it read, "Only the worthy shall claim the gifts of the grave." "Great," Thalindra muttered. "Nothing ever ends well with inscriptions like that." They crossed carefully, but the moment their boots touched the central dais, the water churned. A whisper echoed, "What would you give?" "For power." Figures rose from the pool, phantoms cloaked in finery, long dead, long cursed. Each carried treasure, jewels, weapons, scrolls, and each bore a different deformity: hollowed faces, twisted limbs, eyes gouged out. The largest stepped forward, holding a sword wrapped in runes that shimmered red-black. "Take," it rasped, "and pay the price." Thalindra's eyes narrowed. "It's a trap." Mira held up a holy symbol. Selûne's light revealed the truth. The radiant glow lit the chamber. The phantoms hissed, shrinking back, but the sword remained, glowing with strange allure. They advanced cautiously. On an altar behind the phantoms lay two artifacts, the sword of betrayal and the amulet of eternal sight, gleaming, pulsing. Mira gasped. "It's real, the amulet. It's clean. Pure. But the sword?" "I know that look," Thalindra said. "That sword calls to you." Mira shook her head. "No, not me. You." Thalindra turned to her. "What?" "You crave vengeance. Power. The sword knows." Thalindra approached it slowly. The sword's whispers reached only her ears. "With me, you could have stopped his death. With me, you can kill kings." Her hand hovered over it. "What happens if I take it?" Mira's voice cut through the room. "You invite it in, and it never leaves." For a moment, silence. Then Thalindra turned, took the amulet of eternal sight instead. The sword screamed, the chamber trembled, the phantoms lunged, battle erupted. Mira summoned divine light again, her magic now stronger, faster. She cast warding flare, blinding one spectre as Thalindra drove a blade through it, banishing it in a pulse of silver energy from the amulet. Another spectre tore at Mira's robes, leaving black claw marks across her chest, but she retaliated with wraithfire, incinerating it mid-scream. The sword hovered, twitching, desperate for a wielder. "No one takes you," Mira hissed. "Not today." She plunged her holy symbol into its heart. The sword exploded in a shockwave of cursed energy, sending both women flying. When the dust cleared, the phantoms were gone. The sword was no more, only ashes, and Mira knelt in the center, her robes charred, her body glowing faintly. Thalindra crawled toward her. "Mira," the cleric opened her eyes. They shone silver, her voice was calm. "I saw her, Selûne. For a moment I stood in her light." Thalindra grinned. "You're glowing." "I feel whole, stronger." As they rested, Thalindra examined the amulet. "This sees more than just the material world. There's something behind this wall." Using the amulet's power, she activated a hidden glyph, and the golden door creaked open. Beyond it lay a treasure vault of unimaginable wealth. Chests of gold, stacks of scrolls, ancient armor, and arcane tomes. But none drew their gaze like the final mural carved into the wall behind it. It depicted Valdris in chains, but now he was smiling. Behind him, the world burned. Mira read the ancient inscription aloud. "The final seal lies beneath the moon's gaze. When the chains break, the world will mourn again." Thalindra turned to her. "The tomb wasn't the end, just the prison. He's still coming." Mira nodded. "Then we need to find the final seal and stop him before it breaks." She closed her hand around the amulet. "For Gorun, for the realm." Night cloaked the land as Mira and Thalindra stood atop the cliffside overlooking Black Hollow. The stars were hidden. The moon, veiled in clouds, offered no light. Only the wind whispered through the trees, restless, waiting. Mira held the amulet of eternal sight aloft. The obsidian surface shimmered faintly, revealing lines of arcane power beneath the earth, converging beneath one location. The old chapel. "The final seal is below the village," she said quietly. "Right beneath their feet." Thalindra narrowed her eyes at the distant steeple. "Then we finish this tonight." They descended silently, cloaked in darkness. The village slept unaware, unconcerned that their salvation or damnation teetered in the catacombs below their homes. They entered the chapel, where dust coated every pew and vines grew through shattered stained glass. At the altar, a cracked moonstone embedded in the floor pulsed faintly. Mira stepped forward and spoke the ancient phrase etched into the amulet's edge. "Let the hidden be known beneath the moon's gaze." The floor trembled. With a low groan, the altar split in two, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into blackness. The air grew colder as they descended, but it was not the cold of death. It was anticipation. The silence felt held in place by something ancient, as if the very air feared to move. They emerged into a vast cavern. Pillars of bone lined the walls, and in the center stood a dais, ringed by 7 standing stones. Atop the dais was a coffin, sealed by a lattice of silver chains. Thalindra stepped forward. "That's him. That's Valdris." The body within the coffin stirred. At last, the seal breaks. From the shadows, robed figures stepped forth. Ghosts of Valdris court, the loyal dead who had sealed him once, now risen again, enslaved. Mira raised her holy symbol. "He's too close to returning. We must destroy the seal, on our terms." "Won't that release him?" Thalindra asked. Mira looked toward the dais. "Not if we rewrite it." Thalindra blinked. "You want to rebind a god of undeath?" Mira nodded. "With his own chains. But I need time and protection." Thalindra smiled faintly. "Buy time. Got it. Let's see how many I can dance with." She vanished into the dark. Mira knelt beside the seal, hands glowing with divine energy. "Selûne, guide my hands." Thalindra reappeared among the ghosts like a whirlwind, blades flashing. She severed shadow limbs, dodged curses, and threw daggers that exploded with silent bursts of light. She moved with precision and fury, driven by the memory of Gorun's fall. But for every spectre she struck down, another rose. At the dais, Mira's breath quickened. Her magic surged through the chains, rewriting the ancient runes. Sweat poured down her face. Almost there. Valdris's voice echoed again, closer this time. You seek to cage me again. Fools! I am the storm. I am what follows death. The coffin burst open. Valdris rose. He was no longer skeletal, but something worse. A body forged of shadow and bone, crowned with silver fire. His eyes burned with eclipsed light. Thalindra cried out, trying to reach Mira, but was slammed into a pillar by a blast of necrotic force. Mira stood, raising her arms. Selûne, lend me your strength. The amulet blazed with silver fire. Valdris screamed and lashed out. A tendril of darkness struck Mira in the chest, but the amulet fled, holding the blow at bay. She took a step forward, chanting. Chains of moonlight surged from the standing stones, wrapping around Valdris's limbs. He roared in fury. You cannot bind me again. You were never truly free, Mira said, voice ringing with divine power. The final glyph on the chains glowed, rewritten, sanctified by Selûne. With a thunderous crack, the chains surged inward. Valdris screamed. The dais exploded in light. Then, silence. When the dust cleared, only the 7 standing stones remained. The coffin was gone. The air smelled of salt and wind, not rot. Thalindra helped Mira to her feet. You did it. No, Mira said quietly, her voice raw. We did. They climbed the stairs together. Dawn broke as they emerged from the chapel. The village stirred, unaware how close they'd come to ruin. Birds sang. The clouds parted. Mira turned to Thalindra. It's over. For now, Thalindra said, but if he stirs again. We'll be ready, Mira replied. The cleric glanced at the amulet of eternal sight, now dim and cracked. No more whispers, no more visions, she said. It gave all it had. Thalindra unsheathed her dagger. And yet we're alive. Mira smiled. And stronger. They stood in the light of morning, not as survivors, but as guardians of a secret no one else would ever know. Behind them, the chapel door closed on the final seal.